Welcome back to the Landlord Profitability Playbook. I'm Chris McAllister with ROOST Real Estate Company, and I'm joined here today by Gretchen Mitchell, our Director of Property Management, and Brad Owens, who manages our ROOST Rehab and Maintenance Company team. Today, we're going to unpack what we've been calling this summer Rehab and Maintenance 2.0. And what that really comes down to is it's a far more structured approach to maintenance and especially unit turns than we've ever had before. And what's just become super clear to all three of us over the past few months is that this whole unit turn process is absolutely critical to delivering consistent and profitable results to our owners. And I throw these terms around, rehab and maintenance 2.0, but this isn't about something that's flashy or fancy branding. It's really a basics, back to basics approach, and it's about creating systems that landlords can rely on for faster turns, fewer surprises, and ultimately less cost and a whole lot less aggravation. So, morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning. We're good. How are you?
I'm good. Brad, you've not been on a podcast with us before, so why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about your background and how you came to work at ROOST Real Estate Company.
Well, good morning. I'm Brad Owens, and before here, I delivered food actually for 9 years. And before that, I was in the construction field, which gave me a little bit of experience dealing with the maintenance and rehab department. So yeah, I'm excited to be here at Roost.
And then prior to that, you were like a roofing subcontractor, right? Look.
Yep, roofing, siding, installed doors, windows, did a little bit of interior work. So yeah, had my hands in a little bit of everything.
So how did you come to work for Roost? You've been with us, is it a year yet or a little over a year?
Just over a year. Yep. And I just decided that over the road, on the road just wasn't my thing. I did it for a while, and I really like the construction field and just wanted to get back into it. And I started here at Roost in the maintenance department, and now I'm pretty much just overseeing, what needs to be done in the rehab and maintenance department. So
you started off as one of our field service people, our maintenance guys. So you were, when we would get, requests for maintenance from a tenant, you'd be one of the people that goes out and goes to the property, knocks on the door, and hopefully gets it fixed.
yes, sir.
Yep. And so not an easy job, but you pulled it off and you did a great job. And we knew you had batteries included, as I like to say, and now you're running the whole show. So we appreciate having you here.
My pleasure.
So this whole rehab and maintenance 2.0 thing, I've been really wrestling all summer long and with, what has to be different about what we do internally, what has to be different about our marketing, what has to be different about how we communicate with our owners when it comes to rehab and maintenance. So we've got a pretty comprehensive blog post that probably would be published in the next couple of weeks. And it really comes down to that, maintenance isn't optional, it's foundational. And I think most landlords know that, but it's always good to come back and sort of review. So, Gretchen, why do we think that maintenance isn't optional, but that it's really foundational?
There's a handful of reasons, but you're protecting your investment, your asset. When you are taking care of these properties and you're making sure maintenance is done and preventative maintenance as well, it makes a happy tenant, lets them stay longer. Making sure things are up to code, things are still safe, secure, and functional.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I've always said landlord profitability starts with maintenance. If you don't have the property right, if it's not safe, secure, functional, if it's not to the neighborhood standard, it's going to kill you, either because it costs more to fix later, or because it's harder to rent, or it's harder to rent at the right price, or it's harder to keep the tenants. So, keeping properties maintained is critical. And I think what people fail to realize, or what a lot of landlords fail to realize, is, when at the beginning, when a property gets turned, so if there's an issue that happens between tenants, whether it's, a major rehab or a minor rehab, and, any landlord owner listening to this podcast knows that, as we started to come out of COVID a couple of years ago, and people started to move out of houses that they've been confined to for almost 2 years, the cost of turns and so forth just felt outrageous, because it was. So there was far more wear and tear on the properties, because we had whole families in there together for days, weeks, months at a time. And then on top of that, as we came out of COVID, the cost of everything went up. Inflation went crazy. And the cost of just getting things done went through the roofs. Part of it was demand, part of it was just overall inflation. But most of those costs came from the fact that people were in those houses for so long, cooped up together, couldn't go to school, couldn't go to work. But there is, and we're starting right now, the evidence is somewhat anecdotal, but we use Property Meld as our maintenance platform. And we hear from the people at Property Meld who, work with property managers like us all over the country. They're starting to get data, because they know when a property is vacant, because, Property Meld interfaces with Appfolio or Buildium or whatever the property manager software is. So Property Meld has a really good sense of when a property is vacant. They also know when a property is leased, and then they also know how often maintenance requests are made and at what time frame in a lease cycle. And I'm really excited to see their data, but they're putting together reports, and what we're hearing from them early on is that there is a clear link between the tenant taking care of the property, staying in the property, and renewing their lease for another year at a higher rate if their maintenance issues are addressed promptly and correctly. Now, it seems like common sense, but I'm a numbers guy, so I get super excited when somebody's going to put that on paper for me. Mm-hmm. But we think, we know it intuitively that those things matter. And the other thing that's also important is they don't necessarily get angry because there was an issue. They get angry when their issue is ignored, or they feel that nobody cares or nobody explains what's happening. Those are the things that just, honestly just piss people off. The other thing that we're starting to learn is that the number of maintenance issues that come up right after a new tenant moves in, let's say somebody moves into a property and it's clearly not ready when they move in, right? Maybe some of it's basic, maybe the furnace or air conditioner isn't working right, and they realize that the filter hasn't been changed, or maybe the refrigerator isn't working right, or there's a plumbing issue, the sink continues to get backed up. Whatever those issues are, if those issues are there when they move in, it's obviously nobody wants that, right? When somebody moves into a property, it's got to be safe, secure, and functional. But those types of issues that require them to get maintenance done early on in the lease term, that's the concern, because even if we take care of those and we take care of them correctly, the chances of them renewing for another year at an increase or not just drops like a rock. So having the property correct when people move in and being able to address, courteously, promptly, and correctly the issues that come up it just makes people stay, and that's where profitability comes from. I guess I had a lot to say today, guys. I'm sorry. I'm ranting.
Well, no, you're right. It starts off the relationship on a bad foot. I mean, they're excited to move in, they're relieved that it's over, and then they run into problems. It just starts it uncomfortable for them, and maybe they don't trust us then at the very beginning. So it's really important. Our goal is what I tell everybody, when we work here, is when somebody moves in, our goal is to not have a single maintenance issue come in for the first 30 days. If we do, then we did something wrong, but we need to address it right away and apologize. And you're right, just stay communicating with them, and it does make all the difference in the world.
So Brad, why don't you kind of take us through how we handle maintenance in occupied units?
Okay, so all the tenants have the availability for a system called Property Meld, which they are able to get online, make the work order any time of the day. Description on there, they can actually upload photos to give us an idea of really what's going on. And then our maintenance coordinator schedules those work orders accordingly. And then we get out there and get it addressed, or at least get an eye on it. And if we need to call an additional contractor, if it's more in depth and our maintenance guys can't take care of it, we have those contractors on hand to call right away. So
Yeah. And we have right now, what do we have 5 or 6 maintenance people right now that,
yeah.
so rattle them off, guys. We've got,
We have, okay, let's go around the table at our Monday meeting. So we have Shane, Jimmy, Tony,
Dawn,
Don, Tyler, and Paul.
yes.
so that's 6. And then we have
Six.
another gentleman that we've extended an offer to, hopefully starting in the next few days in the
Right, so
Springfield market.
6, soon to be 7.
Yeah, and all these people are W-2 employees. They work for us, and they're covered by our liability insurance. They're covered by workers' comp, and this is kind of unique for our company. Yes, other companies do it the way we do it, but what I'm finding is more often than not, the way most property managers companies handle maintenance, they may still use a platform like Property Meld, but they send those melds to third-party contractors whom they have no real control over. So whereas something happens in our properties that we manage, these people work for us. So they not to put too fine a point on it, they go where we tell them to go, when we tell them to go. And that tends to really up the service level, for our tenants. Tell us a little bit, Brad, about how do we handle after hours? What happens there?
So the guys, we have a on-call phone. Any after hours work orders that's called in goes to a professional service that actually notifies the tech that has the phone for the week. We rotate on-call hours. Tech has it for a week. At the Monday morning meeting, we switch the phones over to the next tech. And that tech will take care of the after hours calls for that following week.
Yeah.
In any emergencies, we can avoid going out and taking care of, and we can talk the tenant into possibly shutting off a water supply or something like that. We don't try to go out unless we absolutely need to, but we have the techs on call, if we need to get out there. So.
Yeah, so 8 to 4, or 10 to 4 are regular office hours where we have people answering the phones. During those times, if a call comes in, we field those live in the office and we get those to the maintenance coordinator or Brad to, get on the schedule. But if something happens after 4 p.m., that's quote after hours for us or on the weekends. So the phone system is set up that if somebody calls and they get the phone tree, and they need a maintenance request, and if this is an emergency, press 1 or whatever it is, then that goes to the after hours calling service. Calling service does the best they can, make sure that they're legitimate, whatever, and at that point they forward that call to our on-call maintenance guy for that week, and they've got the company on-call cell phone, and that's been working pretty well. I mean, maintenance guy wants to take that on, but I like to think that we take pretty good care of our maintenance guys, and I don't think we've really ever had a lot of pushback about the guys having to do after hour maintenance.
No. And our, just a little off subject, but our guys they work so well together that even if, at the Monday maintenance meeting, say it's Shane's turn to get the phone, Shane might say, hey, it's my son's birthday, and Don will take it for the weekend, and then they swap back again. So they work really well together. But yeah, what's cool about that third party is that they don't even talk to the tenant. So the third party company will call the maintenance tech, have a good conversation, and then the maintenance person can reach out to the tenant, which is nice.
Yeah, Perfect. So the other thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about was, and this goes back to our property management agreement that we have with the owners. But we have authorization in our property management agreement that we can spend up to $600 to deal with a non-emergency situation. If there's an emergency situation after hours, and a decision has to be made as to whether or not we need to go above that $600 threshold to make sure that the property is severely damaged, then the wording is such that we're able to do that too. $600 still seems like a lot of money to me as an owner, but the way things are these days, that's kind of the threshold that we need to have the leeway to do what's right, to protect the property, protect the owner, and to take care of the tenant as well. But I guess having said that, if something does come up out of the ordinary, or if it, sometimes a property will have a bad rash of things that happen. It seems like when something goes wrong, it comes in threes. So it's not like that, we're going to spend $600 3 times in a given week or month without having a conversation with the owner, because this is what makes or break an owner, is rehab and maintenance. So yes, we have that threshold. Yes, it helps us protect the property and take care of the tenant. But we are also incredibly conscious of the fact that, $600 is still $600. But that threshold matters. It keeps owners in control without slowing down the day-to-day fixes, and it allows us to take care of emergencies that need to be done. And a lot of the problems that happen overnight always involve broken water pipes or something, especially if it's wintertime. So our ability to get out there, take care of something, it pays for itself, 100-fold, in a true emergency. Gretchen, do you mind just taking everybody through who's listening? I just want to give our listeners a sense of what our owners, basically pay for these services. So if you could just sort of take us through, what do we bill back for our maintenance people's time to the owners, and that kind of thing.
So our current base rates for the maintenance tech to go out during regular business hours is $75 an hour. If it is after hour emergency, like a busted water pipe in the middle of the night, it bumps up to $112.50. There is a clause or a sentence, I guess, in the PMA that says special, more skilled services that we provide may be billed at a higher level, but it hardly ever happens. And sometimes we actually like to take it down a little bit just to make a project more affordable for some people. But the base rate, the current, is $75 an hour. And then we charge 15% on materials purchased on the owner's behalf. So when we use our credit cards, our Lowe's and Home Depot account, we bill back 115% of that.
Right, 15%. I thought you said 50, but yeah, 15%.
15, no, God. 15.
Yeah, and our prices are going to go up again into 2026. And the fact is, everything continues to go up. The insurance goes up, everything, of course, we pay all the matching tax and so forth. So our base rate of $75 will go to $80 in 2026, and it's time and a half after hours, so that 80 becomes 120 in 2026. But the nice thing is, those seem like big numbers, but what it costs to send a HVAC contractor out to take care of a furnace always costs more.
Oh gosh,
than
just
what
to walk
our
through the
guys.
door. Yeah, just to walk through the door, I
Yeah.
think they charge like $115 just to go there.
Yeah. So our guys are always cheaper. And the cool thing is, I think 3 of our guys are certified as HVAC.
Yep.
Almost all of them have experience in basic plumbing, auto electrical and things like that. So as much as it is a big number and it is a lot of money, it's still a service and a price point that we're able to offer our owners that is far, far less than what they would get if they tried to contract that work themselves, or just had to go out and get retail. And again, I want to emphasize that our folks are W-2 employees. So, what we bill back has to cover wages, benefits, insurance, overhead, the trucks. Some of the guys drive our trucks. If they don't drive our trucks, they get paid mileage between jobs. So that money has to cover quite quite a lot, but we do our very, very best to manage that to the absolute extreme. You mentioned the Monday meetings. It's a tedious 2 hours, but Gretchen and Angela and Brad sit in those Monday meetings with all the maintenance guys, and they meticulously go over every time card, every meld, make sure that the work was done, make sure it was completed, make sure it's charged back correctly. So we, please know, we do our best to make sure that those costs are fair and more importantly, reasonable. And I guess the ultimate word we're looking for is affordable, whether we like to have to spend the money or not. The other thing that I am so proud of this group that we have now, and some of these folks have been with us, what, 5 years, maybe 6 years?
Yeah, Dawn and Paul, at least 5 years each.
Yeah. Here's the other reason why I really think the world of these guys. We started a program a couple of years ago, or going on 2 years ago now, called Have I Earned a 5-Star Review Today? So, everybody basically in the company is tasked with, when they have a interaction with a tenant or an owner, our goal is that, they or all of us close that conversation with, did I take care of your concerns today? Well, let me ask you this. Did I earn a 5-star review today? And, obviously when you ask for a 5-star review, if you're going to get a review, you get a 5-star review. So if you look at our reviews online, we're at like a 4.6, I think, in Springfield, and a 4.8 in Columbus, or vice versa, which I'm super proud of. But when you dig deep, they're all 5-star reviews, except for the odd person who really thinks that we don't deserve to live, or God forbid, we actually did something wrong. And if you see that, you'll see how we address that online. But one of the major reason why, we're above 4.5 everywhere is because of the maintenance guys, and they consistently, week after week, they get these 5-star reviews, and it's great for the company. It's great for the tenants. And, I think all of that plays into the fact that, our tenants tend to stay longer. My minimum goal for every tenant is, I want to see 3 years out of a tenant. I don't want to see an owner have to do a unit turn. Every third year is too long, but to have people come and go year after year just destroys owner profitability. And one of the ways that people, tenants feel good about the Roost team and the property that they're living in is the maintenance guys, and I think that's reflected in the reviews. All right, so let's talk about the thing that's been just bugging the crap out of us for the past few months, and that is unit turns between tenants. Now, I have to say we've been pretty good at maintenance for a while now, but unit turns between tenants is something that we weren't prepared, I think, as a company to take care of the way they need to be taken care of. We certainly didn't have the staffing to do it. We didn't have the procedures to do it. And that's what I'm most excited about as we go forward as a company and working with our owners. So Brad, why don't you take us through the process of what happens, when a tenant, I guess between the two of you, what happens when a tenant gives notice, and what happens, between the time a tenant gives notice and the time that that property is rent ready again?
Okay, so first things first, we just get to the unit and we check out the condition of the unit. We make sure that it is vacant. We go ahead and make sure that we change the locks. All the windows are secure, and it's basically vacated. Now, some of the units end up having extensive repairs, and some are left in pretty good condition. At that point, what we do is we go in and make a report. Is a SAP report is what we call it. We walk through. We actually check the exterior first. We do room by room once we are on the interior, and we check all the main items: your plumbing, your electric, making sure your furnace is running, your AC is running. And during that inspection, we do note that, okay, that the walls may need painted, they may need touched up. we may need to replace a light fixture or a faucet. And that's all made into the SAP report. And then
No,
once we,
SAP report is short for Site Audit Pro. So Site Audit
Yeah.
Pro is a app that you can find in the app stores on your phone. They also have a website, and we use SAP or SAP for short for Site Audit Pro.
yes, yes, yep. And once we make that report up, we go back through and we do some suggestions on what could potentially, bring possibly some better rent income, or even just improve the look of the unit. And we break it down to necessities, and then the suggestions. And then we send it over to the owners. And once they review it and decide on what they would want to do with the unit, we make sure it's taken care of.
Well, I'm going to fill in some of the steps. So you make it sound easy and you're making it look easy. But let me fill in a couple of the steps. Brad doesn't give himself enough credit for what happens with these SAP reports. So, once we get that report, that's all fine and dandy. And we're going to talk a little bit here in a minute about, how we approach making that report. But the idea is that we get a thorough document that shows pictures and words about the condition of that property. And from that, we can create a comprehensive scope of work for the project. And we build that directly from, the SAP inspection data. So we've actually gone so far as to add another team member this summer. Her name's Rena. She lives in Florida. She's actually worked for us in different capacities for, going on 20 years now. But she currently looks after our properties in Florida that we look after. And back in the day when we had a lot of REO and bank-owned business, she used to spend hours and hours and hours doing broker price opinions and things like that. So now what happens is Brad gets that SAP report done, he gets it to Rena, and then Rena is transferring that information to, I guess, what we call at this point a bid sheet. And then she takes that bid sheet and she sends it out to our third-party contractor partners, right? So, and again, this is a situation where, especially in Springfield, we've got some of these contractor partners that, my God, Gretchen, I think they've been with you since you got your license, right?
Oh, yeah. Long time.
So we always try to get at least 2 bids from trusted contractor partners, people who do a good job, people who do what they say they're going to do, people who, are fairly priced. And Rena sends out that scope of work. She gets the bids back from the contractor, and then she summarizes that, and she gets it to Brad. And from there, Brad's able to get on the phone with the owner and, share the SAP report, and then share what the fact that, we got this bid, they're doing it this way, they're doing it that way, here's the cost, and here's our recommendation. So, we try to give the owners a clear summary of the background work we did, who are the contractors, what's our relationship with them, and just as importantly as the cost, it's when can they start and when do they think they will be finished? Because the other thing that's really killing all of us now is the fact that the contractors are so busy that getting into their queue and have them, getting started it's a first come, first served thing. So sorry about that, Brad, but I wanted to get all that stuff in there that you're also doing.
Yeah. There's some details in there. Yeah, I kind of just jumped right to the finish point there. Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
That's the goal. I went straight to the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's why you do a good job. So completion options. So there's 3 ways that a turn might get done. There's the third-party contractor managed by Roost, and I think that's probably, 75, 80%, maybe even more of the turns that we complete are probably done by, trusted third-party contractors that we manage and hold accountable and make sure that they've done the work before they get paid. And then the second option is we have our in-house maintenance guys. Actually, Don is more of a turn team, a unit turn guy right now, and Tyler is his helper on those. So the first choice is third-party contractor. The second choice is we can do it in-house with our employees. And the third is we have a handful of owners that handle their own turns. We've got owners who have given up their their full-time jobs, and they don't want to talk to tenants, they don't want to do the accounting, so forth, but they still like the idea of going in and handling their own unit turns and sometimes their own maintenance. So 3 ways a turn can get done. Again, third party, our in-house team, and there are times when we have owners that we work with and we support that do their own turns. But you know, Gretchen, maybe you can take us through just for a second here. We do have a document out there called minimum standards, for the properties that we choose to take on to manage, and then those minimum standards also apply to the properties that we're comfortable continuing to manage. So, any words of wisdom about those minimum standards, Gretchen?
Well, our goal, the words that we use all the time are safe, secure, clean, functional. Those are the main points that we need to make sure every home has. So working smoke detectors, screens in the upstairs windows, probably, no trip hazards on the floor, clean furnace filters, a clean house, make sure the drawers open and close, the basic things. It doesn't always have to be pretty. You don't always have to do a full paint. You can do a touch-up. You can just make sure the holes are covered with a little bit of touch-up. You don't have to go 100% all the way, make it pristine. Safe, clean, secure, and functional is what we need.
Yeah, and that's critical because we need to be safe, clean, secure, functional. If it's a $700 a month unit,
Right.
a $500 a month unit, or a $1,700 a month unit. Yeah, and there's a reason why, some properties in some neighborhoods rent less than other properties in other neighborhoods. And some of that are amenities, some of it is condition. But again, at the end of the day, safe, secure, functional, and clean. So we have a minimum standards document. You can find it on the website in the frequently asked questions portion of Invest with Roost, and we'll add that to the show notes too. But I want to stress that these standards aren't excessive. Basically, we just copied what HUD's basic guidelines are, housing and urban development. And when we say basic, we're talking about HUD guidelines are one operable window per room, that there can't be holes in the walls or floors and that things have to work. So we're not talking about turning every property into, I don't know what you want to say. I guess it comes back to above and beyond what the neighborhood standard is. These are about the basics that people need to live and live safely.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to mention real quick is, the vast majority of the turns that we manage for owners are done by third-party contractors. But there are times when, depending on the size of the turn and how fast the turn, can be done or needs to be done, when it makes sense to have our in-house team do it. And while, our folks, obviously we've already, talked about what we bill back for maintenance. There's the labor when our guys do it tends to cost more than what the third-party people charge. But having said that, there's times when our guys are free today, right? Or our guys are free tomorrow. And it's a smaller job, and we can get in and get out for a super reasonable amount of money. And sometimes it makes sense for the owner to give us the go-ahead to get that done, because we can actually get the unit back up for rent again a heck of a lot faster than if we wait for a third-party contractor on a smaller job. So I think the smaller jobs where we're quick, it makes sense to authorize Roost to do the turn. But on the majority of the jobs, it's going to be a third party. And then again, the third option is if an owner decides that they're going to handle their own turns. One caveat on that, though, we've had owners that are out of state, and maybe they're not too keen on the numbers Brad gives them. They want to go out and see what they can do. And they'll take that SAP report and they'll send it off to somebody they find, and they say, well, I've got somebody that's going to do this turn, they'll take care of it. And then it turns into an issue for that owner and us, because in many instances, we'll go back and go look at that property to get ready to take pictures and put it up for rent. And, that contractor standards weren't even close to what our minimum standards are. So, we really like to, help the owners, whether they want to do it themselves or have us do it, understand, what is appropriate for that neighborhood, what it needs to be done to, maintain the rent that you're currently receiving, and what needs to be done or could be done to improve the property and raise the rents if the surrounding homes are actually renting for more than theirs, if that makes sense. And that takes us to the other thing that this summer that's been keeping us up nights, right? What exactly should be done in a given house for a unit turn? So I know I'm just rambling on here, guys. You're going to have to jump in, but the most important thing about this whole idea of Roost Rehab and Maintenance 2.0 is how we approach what actually should be done in a property. So it's like we have two levels of turns, right? So Gretchen, why don't you run that through real quick and tell us what those two levels are and what that's all about.
Yeah, we have a minimum turn. So you will probably, when the next tenant comes in, you're going to get the same rent you were probably getting with the last one. Um, it meets the minimum standards and it gets it back on the market very quickly. But again, you're going to probably collect the same amount of rent. Depending on what you do or don't do, maybe lower, just depending. And then we have the enhanced turn option, which is upgrades to the property with improvements like full painting instead of touch up, maybe swapping out that carpet finally for the LVP. Um, just different changes, maybe swapping out the sink, or maybe the countertop had a little burn mark and it's time to replace it. That way you still want to be in the market rent, so we're going to help owners decide what's necessary and what's not. But that enhanced option will more than likely, it's going to get you more rent each month. But again, we like to help the owners that especially have never even been to the property, let alone Ohio, figure out what the market standard is. Sometimes owners want to say, okay, I'm ready to put granite countertops. On this one, here's the max rent you're probably going to get. I don't think you should do granite countertops. Maybe we should do this middle of the road countertop.
Yeah. So we've got minimum, which I really want to stress with everybody listening. The minimum is our default, right? When Brad and his team go out and they do a SAP report, they're doing that SAP and they're creating that scope of work based on the default minimum. However, and Brad, I know you've been working on sort of redoing how we do the SAP reports. We're going to give our owners, or we do give our owners, that default minimum to keep the costs down. We say keep the rent the same, but hopefully it's at least get, the 3% or 4%, whatever rents have gone up. But it's about doing the basics, safe, secure, clean, and functional at the lowest possible cost while maintaining the rent. And then the other piece, the optional, is about if there's an opportunity to upgrade a property to the neighborhood standard. And sometimes upgrading to the neighborhood standard could mean a significant rent increase. Like I've had several opportunities this year, two that come to mind that I've done on my own properties in Springfield, where, I put a lot of money into these properties, but I had a couple occasions where I was able to, raise the rent by $500 a month. So, if I spent, if I'm getting an extra 6,000 in rent, and it cost me 12,000 to do the upgrades, right? I mean, I think when I went to school, that's a 50% return on my investment, right? So I'm going to get that paid back in 2 or 3 years, and at that point, the house has been well maintained. The value has gone up, my rents have gone up, and everything makes sense. But that only works on a house where there's room to
Right.
improve the rents and upgrades. So that's critical.
I was
And
just
Brad,
thinking
I
about
know
your house
you're,
on Bellevue when you just put central air in it, and we're
yeah,
getting hundreds of dollars more each month now.
yeah.
Right.
I've never done central air as a rule, but there's a couple of places when the rents have gotten so much better around here that it just made sense. And so we went ahead and did it. But Brad, how are you going to be showing on the SAP report, here's the default, here are some things that you might want to talk to us about and think about. What's that going to look like?
So yeah, when the SAP reports are done, like you said, we take pictures of everything and we put the notes in there of what really needs to be done necessity wise. If the flooring is just destroyed, obviously we're going to have to pull it up. Maybe we can paint the floors opposed to putting new carpet back down. Um,
It's
you
always
know,
a
it, yeah, it tends to save a lot of money and don't have to worry about that again. A lot of houses you can't do
You're
that with.
actually going to show though on the SAP, I think. I don't know if you're going to do it by room or at the end, the default and then the
minimum
options. How
standard.
will people see those optional items?
You'll see it. You'll see the breakdown in each room.
Okay.
You'll see the pictures, and then you'll see the literature on the necessities, and then in that same area, you'll see the suggestions at the lower portion of the literature there on the suggestions per room, and we'll break that down per room. And it could be, as simple as blinds, or it could be more in depth as flooring.
Yeah.
Every unit's different, so you really don't know till you get in there and you get that report done.
So Rena's going to get quotes for the default minimums, but she'll also get quotes if the whole job was done. But we're going to lead with the minimums.
Yep. We're going to lead with the minimums and necessities, the minimums, and then these suggestions that we could spice up the property a little bit better and potentially bring in some better rent. So
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that, we had an interesting summer was, we have a couple of our larger owners that, they have a mix of properties. They have some lower end properties, C properties, D properties, whatever people want to categorize them. And then, maybe one or two, B or A properties. But I don't care who we're working with right now, whether it's an owner who's having a great year or historically successful, or we're dealing with an owner who everything comes in threes, right? Three people moved out at the same time or what have you. But owners are stretched right now, and even if they have the wherewithal to do some things, upgrade properties, get things done, nobody feels really great about spending the money, whether they have it to spend or not. I think that's just the nature of the economy right now, just how everybody feels. But our job is to help keep these costs down while protecting that owner profitability. And I think we got into the habit, just passing along the lowest bid, to an owner and say, here, we've got three bids. This one's low.
Let's
You
go
might
with
want
this
to do
one.
that. But yeah, but that's not what our owners need. It's not what I need as an investor. It's not what any investor needs, right? They can't have their property manager just going out and shopping for a low bid for something that still doesn't make sense to do, or from a return on investments perspective. So, we don't do quote remodeling for remodeling sake. Anything that we counsel or Brad counsels an owner to do, it's done through the lens of the owner, and it's done through the lens of, maintaining this property as a profitable investment, which is what the landlord profitability playbook is all about. And I feel like to some degree we lost sight of that, but we had a couple of owners that just, really uh, brought that home for us. And I just want to, I've told the story a million times, and it sort of airs our dirty laundry, I guess, but it also speaks to, how deep in the weeds, you guys are in this. So, we had a couple of partners, Ron and Zach, that had a property in Springfield, and we had already put some money into it. It looked great. It was fantastic flooring. I don't know if we put that flooring in or what, but we got down to the fact that the house was pretty well ready to rent, and we're talking about a property that's $900 to $1,000 in rent, and there was a mixture of older windows and newer windows in the property. But the older windows, and there was just five of them, they wouldn't stay up, right? You would raise the window. If you could get them to raise up, they would just fall back down. And these were big, heavy windows. So it was a safety issue and so forth. So, we went out, our guys did exactly what we asked them to do, and they got quotes to replace these windows. And, I think the best quote was still, somewhere between $3,000 or $4,000, which, when I heard that, I was like, for five windows on this street. But we sent that to the owners and they went off the deep end because there's just no way an investor in these properties is going to shell out that kind of money to replace 5 windows when there is zero chance of return. So, I know I was embarrassed. Brad had to hear about it for 3 or 4 weeks. We're still hearing about it, I guess. But
We
what
still
happened
talk about
was,
it.
so I went to the property and Brad met me there and we're looking at these windows and I said, there's got to be a way. And then I met Shane, Gretchen mentioned before, one of our maintenance guys that's based out of Springfield. And, he looks at him for 5 minutes and says, Shane, there's got to be a way we can fix this. We can't replace these windows. It just doesn't make sense. So, this is why everybody has their own unique ability. Everybody's good at some things. Shane takes a look at these windows, a minute later, he's figured out how to remove them. He's poking his finger down in the edges on the side and he pulls out this rusty old spring. He says, yeah, here's your problem. Okay, great. So I think within 15 minutes, he had found that spring online. We had them ordered that afternoon. And to make a long story short, we took care of these windows for less than $500, far less than $500. And I tell that story because it's good for the team to hear, but I want everybody to know we are not just going into these properties that require a turn and getting 2 or 3 bids, figuring out which one's the lowest and sending them off and say, have at it. We are approaching these properties as if they were our properties, and we're trying to figure out how can we help the owner make sure that this remains a viable investment.
And from this story, the important saying in our office now is the lowest bid isn't always the right bid.
Yeah. Is it even the right thing to do? Does it matter? Will it make business better? Can we get out of the box? Can we get a shade involved? And, again, I'm really proud of these maintenance guys because the caliber of the guys that we have on, and they just happen to all be guys right now, have on hand is such that they can figure things out and they can get things done for a heck of a lot less money than what it normally costs to get something done retail. So anything else, guys, before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. We went through Brad's day to day, didn't we?
Yeah,
we did,
yeah.
whether he wanted to or not.
Yeah.
So Gretchen, tell me this, why are we trying to position ourselves as asset managers and not just property managers?
Because owners need a partner. They don't just need someone to collect rent. Here, slap some paint on the walls. We don't care. We have to think like owners. We have to understand that this is other people's money. They have to make a living. They have to make that mortgage. We just want to be a partner with them. And like I said, instead of just being, just a company on the street, here's your rent, I'm done for the day. We think like owners.
And we're in it for the long term with them. We've got owners that have been with us for years and years and years. And, it's our job. Yeah, it's our job to make sure that the rent gets paid and we hold costs down. But we also need to be the type of partner, the type of advisor or asset manager that is thinking in terms of the terminal value of that property, right? Everything you do, whether it's raising the rent, putting a new roof on, maintaining the neighborhood standard, doesn't just make sure that you're getting that mailbox money every month. It makes sure that at some point that you've maximized the value of that asset when it does come time to sell or to, leave it to a family member at the end. So Roost Rehab and Maintenance 2.0, it's a structure, it's a process, it's how we approach this whole big thing called rehab and maintenance. We're doing everything we can to keep it affordable, avoid surprises, and if not affordable, that it makes sense and it's understandable. And yes, as Gretchen said, we're a partner. And the other thing I want to add as we wrap this up, I have my portfolios, such as it is, I think I've got like 25 doors, and maybe that comes out to 20, 21 properties. And Roost manages my properties. Roost charges me the same thing they charge all of you listening. So I pay the same fees that owners do. I see the same owner's statement. And it's not necessarily good for Brad and Gretchen when I get a repair bill that I immediately pick up the phone and I want to ask about it. But please know that we feel your pain as owners also. And, Brad and Gretchen don't want to explain to me why something cost what it did if it didn't make sense. So we're doing everything we can to treat these like we own them. So Rehab and Maintenance 2.0 isn't about reinventing the wheel. It's not about fancy words or marketing. It's about putting structure in place that ensures consistent, high quality results and, of course, profitability for our owners. So you can, well, in the show notes, we'll have the minimum standards document. We'll have the blog post that we'll be sending out to our database later this month. And we're also going to go ahead, if you're interested in working with us someday, we're going to have a link to our 2026 property management fee sheet. So you can see exactly what we charge for everything we do for our owners. So Gretchen, thank you. Brad, thank you.
You're welcome. It's
My
fun.
pleasure.
Thank you both for being here, and everybody listening, thanks for joining us today on the Landlord Profitability Playbook podcast. Maintenance and turns may not be glamorous, but they're where profitability is won and lost. And with Rehab and Maintenance 2.0, we're making sure our landlords come out ahead every single time.